I think I'm saying that we struggle all our lives to answer it. But it's the struggle that is important. That's what helps us to define our place in the universe.
This is Beverly, Dr. Beverly, Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Look where we are. Here, all of us, in this moment. So let's do what we spent our entire lives learning to be great at.
And this is Crusher Convo. And welcome to Crusher Convo, where we are crushing the conversation one episode at a time. My name is Jessie, and I am flying this ship solo as I discuss the deadly games of Star Trek. So, let's start these quests and see who survives and who gets game over. I really wanted to do this episode just because I realized there's a lot of different game type episodes of survival, okay, in the Trek universe. So I thought this would be a really good episode to talk about. And of course, the big one I'm going to be mentioning, obviously, due to the fact that this is a Beverly Crusher podcast, is the game. But I did want to, first off, sponsor! So, Cherry Tree. Use my code CrusherConvo6 to get 6% off your order. Just head over to mycherrytree.com. They have, of course, like board computers and computer accessories and also t-shirts. And I am donning the Quarks mug, the Ractogino mug. So yeah, just use my code, get 6% off your entire order. It's so much fun over there. You will not be disappointed. And let me check the chat. And here's Ed, my figure universe. Wait a minute. I thought you were supposed to have a guest today. I do not. I do not. I reached out to the universe and no one was able to do it, but that's totally fine. I hope people still enjoy this. Ed also says, next episode taught me one thing. If Riker brings a game on board, you do not play it. And also the question of why do they still go to Risa? Okay. Not really sure why that still happens. And also he wants to highlight of this episode, Robin Leffler. Yes, I will definitely be mentioning Robin, which of course was played by Ashley Judd. And she did a fantastic job. And I think her and Will had amazing, cute chemistry. So I will definitely be mentioning that. I think I'm going to go ahead and start this off by playing a clip of the game just to, get us going. So here we go.
Wesley? Wesley?
In here, Ma.
Worked.
We should keep these markups with us. We can't trust anyone anymore, not even the captain.
Can I just mention real fast that Beverly brought Worf with her, which was brought to my attention when I had seen this episode. I had talked about the game back in season 1 of Crusher Convo, and it was brought to my attention that if Wesley had refused, Worf was there to make sure he played it. And that's kind of, that's a bit much, just a little bit. But here are some deadly games that I wanted to highlight. So, of course, I have the game from The Next Generation. I have Move Along Home from Deep Space Nine. I have The Thaw from Voyager. I have Doomsday Machine from the original series. And that was brought to me by Patreon member Chuck. I also have The Ultimate Computer from TOS, Hiding Q for The Next Generation, The Gamesters of Triskelion, which was also from TOS, and I added Skin of Evil. And the reason why I did that was because I felt Armis was playing a game on our away team, in which led to Tasha's death, because to him, it was all a game. He was just being ruthless and horrible. And because she didn't play by it, there she goes. And like also that was also on there was hiding Q, which, I think that was the one where Riker had gotten Q powers. And of course, Tasha got eliminated from the game and she was in the penalty box and she's crying to Picard. Wesley got staked through the heart, just normal things happening on the Enterprise. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting an interesting episode. And I realized there was a lot of those. And I think it was just because certain things were, I guess they were trying to highlight that certain aliens will do things differently. And you kind of have to figure it out, play along. Hello, Sean. Thank you for joining me tonight. Happy to see you here. It also says, I think the ultimate game was being played by Deanna Troy's mom. She's always trying to play a game on Jean-Luc. That is absolutely true. She was always after Jean-Luc, and those were always the fun. Well, I think it became a game for Picard because he was trying to get away from her. Like, where do I hide next? It was a hide and seek, unfortunately. But I'm going to highlight a few of these episodes, and so I'm going to first talk about the Gamesters of Triskelion. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I had watched this episode this morning, and of course, the away team, which was Chekhov, Kirk, and Uhura, were kidnapped. They were heading down to a planet to check it out, and somehow were kidnapped right off the transporter pad. To the point where Scotty was like, I have no idea where they're at. They're not even down at the surface. We don't know what's going on. And of course, they were used as pieces from a higher species, and they weren't the only ones. Other aliens and humanoids were kidnapped for basically pure enjoyment. And it was like, either you play the game or you die. So this was of course, I had to have the love story aspect for Kirk falling in love with one of the players of this gladiator game. That's kind of what it came down to. But what was interesting is it definitely brought slavery into this conversation. And Kirk even mentioned that, where he was like, I've heard of this. It's called slavery where I'm come from. And so they didn't hide the fact that these people were taken against their will and doing something that they had no control over, right? So I thought that was quite interesting that they brought it up in the manner that they did. It also says, so Sean says, I watched a DS9 episode earlier today with Who Mourns for Morn. That's a good episode. And Ed says that is also a great episode. It also says, I never looked at Morn's stomach the same way again. And Sean says, or his hair. Oh, man. Deep Space Nine had some pretty good episodes. And so those were always the fun ones to pay attention to. And speaking of Deep Space Nine, now if you guys have any thoughts about the Gamesters of Triskelion, please comment. I'm curious of what your guys' thoughts about, like, what kind of game episode that pops into your head while I'm discussing all of this, and just, opening that kind of conversation. Like I said, I brought up Skin of Evil just because Armis was playing a game to the point that it was game over for Tasha, right? And in this sense, there was a lot of characters, not our away team, but a lot of characters in this episode of TOS that did not make it. Kirk killed him, okay, because he was fighting for his life. So very, very interesting of how that came about. But I do want to mention, now that we're talking about Deep Space Nine, let's talk about Move Along Home. Now, I find this isn't a favorite amongst a lot of the fans. They kind of find it kiddish and silly and stuff like that. But when I was watching the episode, it is silly. Don't get me wrong. Especially when they're doing the a la Marine, to go through the force field. And even Kira's like, this is ridiculous. I don't have time for this. What was great about how this was done is that child's play, no pun intended, I hate that movie, is a very scary thing. You take aspects of something childish, like a game, or even Ring Around the Rosie. Like that was a child's, nursery rhyme, a ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And that's like about the Black Plague. Like these aren't very nice lullabies. So it was cool to kind of see it put in this perspective. Now, of course, the whole thing was they were meeting new aliens. They were totally going to have a first contact with them. And these aliens apparently love to play games. And they were trying to teach Quark a lesson in cheating. Them using the 4 senior officers as playthings, like the pieces of the game, didn't really make sense to me. But I guess it was because they really wanted Quark to understand that anything you do, there is some kind of a disadvantage or, things just not going to go your way. And which resulted to Quark completely begging, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me choose. They were trying to teach him a lesson. However, it wasn't in the right, especially for Cisco and Kira and Bashir and Jadzia, they were like, that wasn't cool. Even though their life wasn't ever really in danger, they had to go through obstacles where they thought their life was in danger, right? When they hit that force field, it hurt. When they were in the room with the smoke, they were choking and they had to drink the antidote. Like they were forced into this against their will just to teach Quark a lesson. So of course they were pissed. Sean says that Move Along Home, probably the worst. And a lot of people feel that. A lot of people do not understand the greatness of this episode, but I think they used it with a meaning behind it with Quark. And then, of course, what's the scariest thing? Playing a game that could result to your death. That's not fun, right? Now, Ed says, on your list of deadly game episodes, did you have DS9's Rivals on there? Because I think that would count as a deadly game. I do not, but you are correct. Quark has competition across the promenade with someone that has replicated a game that manipulates chance. Move Along Home is a terrible episode, almost across the board, but it wasn't a necessary evil, so we can have a character development. Exactly. Am I saying Move Along Home is a great episode? No. But I think it has really good points to it. Okay. Which I'll touch more of that when I get to the game. Okay. Totally different reason, but it was kind of like they really need their safety goggles on when it comes to certain things. Now, they were forced to play this game. These aliens were just like, let's play, right? But when you're not sure what you're playing or what you're bringing into your ship or your home or whatever, you kind of need to think twice before start playing that. And again, I'll touch back when I get to the game. Sean says Quark and Garrick are tied for my favorite. For Garrick, who I think he was only in a total of like 30 episodes the entire time. He definitely had an impact. And I think he also had more of an impact with Bashir's development. I don't think we would have had amazing development with Bashir if we didn't have Garrick in the picture. And this also really just resonated with me on why Bashir was not a favorite of mine. I had just done my top favorite doctors on TikTok, and I didn't add Bashir to it. In this particular episode, Move Along Home, it's season 1. I know they're still getting their feet wet, but he kind of was pathetic. Like, he really wasn't any help except for the smoke scene where he realized, drink the antidote, like this is what's going to help. And it was just a guess because he had nothing to lose. But to find out later that he's a Ogmid, really just like, there was a lot of moments where I'm all, yeah, I don't think an Ogmid would have done that, or I think they would have been a little bit smarter or not behaved that way. Obviously, that storyline came years later, so when they were writing this was not on their mindset. But the fact that they wrote it later, you kind of have to think back of like how he was beforehand. So I don't know. I just feel like he should have been more better than he was. And that's just, falls with bad writing, and I get it. But it's just one of those things where, like someone like Beverly or like Phlox or even Pulaski, for goodness sakes, like these are normal human beings doing their thing, and they all had a different quirk to it. No pun intended. Sean does say, though, I loved Bashir. And some people do. I think, Sadiq did an amazing job, again, for what he was written. I think he was better later on, which is why I think Garrick has an impact to his story, especially with all the Section 31 stuff. I think all that stuff with Bashir is great. But again, for being the doctor, for being, following McCoy and Beverly and Pulaski, he was the next doctor in line. I just don't feel like he met that match. Like, he fell below the bar. Like, they had a bar high and he fell below that bar. However, when we end up getting the hologram doctor in Voyager, that bar went back up. And I think it was just because in his particular case, there was a human aspect to it because he was becoming more human in the sense of being a hologram, but he had more, he was developing in that sense. That's why I think his story makes it more special. Sean asks, how did you like the long-running war story? So I'm assuming you mean the Dominion War. I liked it. I thought it was really great in how, it was the whole thing, right? It was practically like half of the series with this whole Dominion War. But the way that they were able to intertwine it with other stories, and then they had some filler episodes. So it being episodic, but not, I think they did that very, very well. I really wish we had that with The Next Generation. It was too episodic for me. And then there was certain points that I wish that they had done more. Like, we did get a little bit of continuity when it came to like the PTSD with Picard. However, I wish we had seen a little bit more of that when we saw Troy or Crusher or even Riker or any one of those characters get abused in some way. If there was just a little bit of like that PTSD, that little like thing in the back, like they're strong characters and they wanted to highlight that, and that's great. But it also makes it more realistic to know that they were bothered by certain things. Just for the fact that Beverly was abused by Ronan. Same thing. Like, she was manipulated and abused that entire time by an alien who had been using her family. And just to kind of see it end like, well, at least he made my grandma happy. Like, that was ridiculous. Absolutely stupid. And then let's not even get into Troy. Troy was mind raped 10 million times. And yet she could counsel people, no problem. It's really difficult when you have those moments, right? Sean also says, and the Nog development. Nog, such a great character. Such a great character, for sure. He had probably one of the best developments in the entire series. I kind of want to put Odo up there as well. I think he grew a lot as a character. And I really would want to say Kira, because she started off really rough around the edges because of where she came from, but she tended to really soften up and really, really, really respected Starfleet and the Federation. That I think was really good for her character to be able to do that. But yeah, it was definitely one of those good things. But, for Move Along Home, it was a season 1 episode. It was kind of one of those things that they were trying out. And like I said, it's not one of the greatest, but I do appreciate what they were trying to do with the story, which is why I am mentioning it today. The next one I'm going to talk about is The Thaw. Okay, so The Thaw was a Voyager episode. This one's a little interesting. It's not one to... It wasn't really a game per se. So here it was a planet that was being destroyed, basically turned into the Ice Age, I'm assuming. And so there were certain people that were surviving and they put themselves in stasis. But in order to survive, they created a program. But this program manifested and basically got too smart because it was following what was in their heads, and they had a fear of dying. They had a fear of what was happening around them, and it manifested into this clown, which of course you use a clown to be the symbol of fear, right? And of course, it's played by the wonderful Michael McKean. who, as everyone knows, my top favorite movie is Jaws. However, number 2 is Clue. It's a delight. And he, of course, played Mr. Green. And he always had just a wonderful way of being silly and funny, but can really be creepy and dramatic in some points, which is exactly what he did in this sense. Now, unfortunately, like a couple of people had already died, and they even lost another person in this thing while they were trying to get them out. They ended up getting, it was really actually Kim that got stuck the most because B'Elanna was able to get out. But it was kind of creepy to see how this computer program manifests itself into something that can ultimately kill you. So that's a little creepy in a sense. And it kind of reminded me of Moriarty. So I will bring Elementary Dear Data into this. Not technically a game episode. However, Geordi created Moriarty due to the fact that he wanted a character to be able to beat Data. So in the sense, Geordi kind of made it a game. He wanted to see how well Data could figure this out. And he created a monster in a sense. And he created a character to now have the ability to understand that it is a hologram, just like the Doctor. But in a bad way, because like it was able to take over the ship. It was able to do things because it was in the hologram program. And even Janeway kind of mentioned something along the lines of like, well, why do people still do things that cause them fear? I was so excited when I heard this because I've been complaining about this for so long. Why are we able to take off the safety controls in the hologram? Why do people still go on roller coasters even though it scares them? And there's just an elemental of adrenaline in that. Like I said, I've always been mentioning, how are you able to take out the safety controls? And they even had a Voyager episode where B'Elanna took out the safety and nearly killed herself because she was depressed. It was about depression. So I loved that they mentioned that little detail in there, but she was like, but how do you defeat fear? Like, how do you stop that and be able to overcome it? Right? And get back to the chat. I'm going to get off my soapbox here for a second. Ed says, I know that the song gets a lot of crap and there's a lot of people that don't like the clown, but this is one of my favorites. I think this is a guilty pleasure for a lot of people. I had Wes from Twin City Trekkies podcast, and he basically said, I know people give this episode a lot of crap, but it's one of my favorites. You are not alone, Wes. Ed agrees with you. Ed also says, if nothing else, the clown was playing games with the Voyager crew, trying his best to keep them within that reality. Exactly. And that's why I brought it up, because it was a game to him. And it wasn't even, what was also kind of sad is that the clown was lonely. He was doing all this stuff and tricking them because he didn't want anyone to leave, because he knew, you guys leave, I'm destroyed. So in a sense, he was trying to save himself. In a sense, it was a game of survival. And Sean says, yep, and Janeway tricks him, and she does. And guess what? He was destroyed. And he plays Saul's better and Better Call Saul. Oh, yeah. I never saw Better Call Saul, but my husband is a fan. I forgot about that. Michael McKean is just absolutely amazing. And I really love that he's married to Annette O'Toole, who I'm also a fan of. So I don't know. I just love that it just in the family there. Ed says, Michael McKean is a wonderful in Spinal Tap, and he was wonderful when he was on Smallville. There are litany of great things he has done, especially Better Call Saul. And he goes, yeah, when Janeway tricks him at the end and he says he's afraid and she whispers, I know, that's classic. So that was interesting because she defeated fear, right? Because that's what he was. He was the epitome of fear. And so to have fear say, I'm afraid, really like, ooh, that was a good in the side, right? That was right there in the throat. So it was nice. And Janeway's just a badass. Like, she just made sure, hey, I'm not going to have you play games with us anymore. I'm going to trick you instead. One thing that I did enjoy was the Doctor. He didn't like his crap Like, he's like, I'm a hologram, dude. Like, you're not going to get to me, but I'm kind of pissed what you're doing and I don't have to like it. And that was kind of his attitude, which was great. One really bad thing was when that one guy died because he died for something he didn't do. The clown was just like, you told him how to stop us, kill him. And he's like, I didn't do anything. And that was just one of those things where it was like, that was a perfect example of this clown not having any consciousness or understanding the difference. But in the end, he ended up getting tricked by his own desires. Well, I want someone to play with for the rest of the time that I have. And that was how she was able to trick him. So, but yeah, I mean, all good episodes, like, Ed had mentioned, I think he said, or was it Ed or Sean? One of you guys had mentioned, I think it was Rivals. And then, of course, like Chuck over at Patreon, he had mentioned the Doomsday Machine. Lot of good episodes that represent games of survival, just trying to survive no matter what the cost is. But let's talk about an episode that wasn't really about survival, sort of. And the reason why this episode brings up so many questions. So many questions. And of course, I am talking about the game, which you saw a clip of in the beginning. This all starts with manipulation and basically what hypnosis, I guess you can kind of call it, in the sense that playing this game completely made them do things against their will. Now, I'm going to add that alien who tricked Riker, who was trying to control the entire Federation, she is a smart chick. I don't know what alien they were. I mean, her ship wasn't that great because they were like, we could destroy it in one fell swoop. But that was smart. Let's trick them into thinking they are doing exactly, they think that this is what they want. But in reality, they're being forced to do it. Ed says, I think the biggest question that can be asked about this episode is why is this game still floating around in the universe on lower decks when they know how dangerous it is? I laughed so hard when I saw that there. I'm hoping that they made it less addicting like it was. I don't know. But who knows? Now, you're able to replicate this game, as we saw, because that's how they made 10 millions of them. That's why everyone had one on the ship. But you were also able to make mock-ups. So I'm assuming they were able to fashion a way to make it not so addicting. But you're kind of right. Why even bother? Why even take the chance? There was really no reason to keep this game floating around. But of course, it's lower decks and they want to do a little Easter egg, and that's the best way to do it. But there was just so many things wrong with this episode. And like I mentioned, first it started with Riker, then he got Troy into it, obviously. And then she got Beverly, and then it was just this domino effect. And if everyone wants to know how Picard got into it, it was Beverly. And so, but of course, here's Wesley, who just so happened to be on the ship and to say hi. He was smart enough not to pay attention. And then he was smart enough to well, what happened to Data? Why is everyone having one? Everyone always got upset about Wesley being the smart one, but this was kind of a redeeming episode for him because he had to be the smart one. Everyone else failed so miserably. Senior officers failed to tell that there was something wrong with this. And of course, I think the part with Data where Beverly completely shuts him off, and then it was her, Riker, and I believe Troy just menacing around him as she's deactivating him. Like, it was just so creepy. And it was so like, oh my gosh, like this stuff is out there and they have to be more careful. I don't understand why they were not more careful. It took their I think Wesley's like, 19 here? Took their 19-year-old, her 19-year-old son to figure it out because he wasn't an adult, I guess. Maybe that was the reason. But it just, and then I'm going to have to mention about how when they played the game, they felt pleasure. So, of course, in the script, it's saying very erotic, pleasurable faces. The only one that really didn't have one was Picard, which I found kind of funny. But it was so weird. Just like Wesley walking in on his mom playing the game while she's in the middle of having something pleasurable. A little awkward, not going to lie. A little weird. It was just not something that I was enjoying. But again, why do they still go to Ryza? What is the point? Every single time they go to Ryza, something happens. Like, what is going on here? I understand it's a great place to go on your shore leave, but come on, guys, when is enough going to be enough? When is enough going to be enough? It says, so maybe in the Star Trek universe, people are just making copies of it like we do with lightsabers from Star Wars, probably. That's the new headcanon, Ed. Riker definitely slept with the evil alien. He probably has multiple times. Well, what was that? That chick that he fell in love with, she was like a servant. This was like in season 3. I can't remember the episode. It was a servant, and she was trying to kill a whole clan of people who ended up destroying her clan. Okay, and he ended up having to kill her. Riker just has bad luck. Ed says, the argument that Wesley Crusher was the smart one always bothered me because the people that are on board those ships should be genius level smart to begin with. That was the issue with a lot of people. Oh, I know how to pronounce your name, and give me a second. Johannes? Johannes. I want to say that. If I'm wrong, let me know. But thank you for here. Say evening, everyone. I'm glad you're here. And here's Dave. Good evening, all. Happy Friday. Thank you guys for joining. To get back to Ed's point here. Oh, I said it right. Yay, Johannes. Okay. I do my best, okay? I always try to be as respectful as possible when it comes to people's name, especially saying them correctly, unlike Pulaski with Data. But I won't get into that. Sean does say, or Riker with a species with no gender. Yeah, that was one of them too. Okay, let's go back to Ed's thing here. Argument that Wesley Crusher was smart always bothered me because, yes, these senior officers are supposed to be genius level. There should not be a teenager doing better than them. And that is why this particular episode was a whole crap of wrong, right? How was it that these people just, oh, you got this random thing from Ryza where we've always had issues with? Sure, let me try it. It just didn't make sense. Aren't there protocols? Like when you bring something new, shouldn't it go through kind of like when you're bringing something from another country, it goes through the, oh shoot. Someone put it in the chat. It goes through, I almost said shipping. That's not it, but it goes through something at the airport to make sure that it's good. Like, shouldn't they have that on the ship? It's customs. Thank you. Going through customs and just to because we don't want to be tricked and manipulated, because they literally were so close in destroying the Federation. I mean, I got to give props to that alien chick. I don't remember what alien species she was, but she was smart. And she was so close, but she didn't anticipate Wesley to be visiting at that time. And what I also really, really loved about how different, though, this episode was, is that it focused on Wesley and it focused on Ashley Judd's character. Okay. So Robin, we saw her for a smidge in Darmok, being with in engineering. And then they brought her back. And I think she was wonderful. And I think her chemistry with Will was wonderful. And I thought it was really cute on how they had their little banter and how everything was, figuring it out. And just those little things. I don't know. It was just adorable. It was a horrible episode, but their stuff I loved. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah. Johanna says, I've been stopped there twice in my life. It's not fun when they tear through all your stuff only to find. I haven't gone through customs, and it sounds like a miserable thing, but I kind of feel like they should have that on the Enterprise, or at least all starships, when they're bringing something they don't know. I'm just saying. Qatarian woman. Aha. It's a Qatarian. There you go. Thank you, Ed. And Sean says, I don't remember seeing her in Dharmic. It's 2 seconds. Like 2 seconds. I don't even know if she had a line. Like, maybe she said yes. Like, it was smidge. But they brought her back. And they gave her a bigger role, obviously. Also, this was kind of sad. They were going to bring her back a third time. And she was going to be brought back, or at least mentioned more. So it was in the episode The First Duty. So when Beverly has come to see Wesley after his accident, she mentions Robin, glad you're okay. And they cut that part out. I think there was supposed to be maybe a scene, and they couldn't get her. I can't remember the details on that, but yeah, she was really nice, and I really enjoyed her character. Well, hello, David. Thank you for joining. Love your icon. I see some Indiana Jones there. He says, the idea that senior officers are genius level, I disagree. Senior officers are not supposed to be the smartest people in the room. They're supposed to make the highest value decisions. And then also goes on to say, true of Kirk and Spock, also true of Picard and Riker. I could agree with that. I guess we're not trying to say that they're supposed to be genius level and better than Wesley, but there always has to be some kind of common sense in their roles. And I feel like that ball was heavily dropped in the game. So I think that's where we're kind of like, so sure if we enjoy this episode, very much. But I do want to mention something. So let's go with my next segment, which is, let me check it out. All right. So in Larry's book, which is Star Trek: The Next Generation Companion. Okay. I have the second edition of this. It says Braga's first assignment on staff was to polish this comment on game addiction, which Susan Sackett and Fred Bronson, who wrote Menage a Troi, had pitched the year before. Wesley comes home and his family's out to get him, is how Braga summarized his more sinister treatment. He made a conclusion effort to make Wesley a little hipper, showing him as a ladies' man and a cadet capable of pulling a practical joke or two. Michael Puller, pleased with the treatment, said it also marked the birth of a good writer. If you can get away with having Troy describe how to eat chocolate in 35 seconds so that it doesn't slow the story, then you're doing something. I guess that's true. I do enjoy what they had here with Wesley. And, with Brandon having to come in and do this. Now, of course, they were talking about game addiction. And I think also, this part where it says Wesley's comes home and his family's out to get him. That picture I used as my main photo, and it's literally Riker and Worf holding down Wesley in the captain's chair, and there's the two most important people just staring at him with the sinister smile. That is creepy as all hell. I'm not lying. Like, that is crazy scary for Wesley in that moment. It was also brought to my attention when I first covered this episode was, Wesley dreamed of always being in the captain's chair, and now he is forced with the people that he adores to play this game to entrap him in this hypnotic situation. And so it's very sinister. It's very creepy. And like I said, even in the clip that I showed, she brought Worf. So if he tried to say no, they were going to force it on him. And that is absolutely insane that that's how they did that. Sean's comment says maybe they were thinking of making her a reoccurring character, but changed their mind. Probably. I think maybe things, scheduling conflicts, like Ashley became pretty big later on that decade. And so I can see that maybe they weren't able to bring her on. But yeah, it was, again, the game concept is a little much, but I do love the Wesley stuff.
Penny for your thoughts.
Now, I didn't really get any penny for your thoughts, but I do have a clip from my season 1 of when I did the game, and it came from Patrick.
Another parallel between Beverly and Robin, it's not an exact parallel, but Robin insinuates in her conversation with Wesley that she had a bit of a rough upbringing. It was an upbringing that it defined who she was, but it wasn't like this perfect thing. She lamented the lack of relationship with her parents, for example. And I know that in Beverly's history is not fully, sorted out on screen, but there's implications here and there that she too did not have some magical, wonderful upbringing. And so again, it's another understandable point of potential attraction between Wesley and Robin.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she even had, I think Wesley had made the comment, "Oh, it seems very lonely," and she just was quiet and was, just smiled, and then that's when Wesley kind of took the cue of like, moving on. We don't talk about, but Beverly had mentioned about being lonely. I believe that was in The Offspring when she was talking to Data about Law, because she was talking to Wesley about how she had also been lonely as a child. So yeah, that's a really good parallel there. So I wanted to mention Patrick's comments about that because I thought that was very, very true. There was kind of a slight parallel between Beverly and Robin, but I did enjoy that moment in 10 Forward. Now, Johanna says it would have added to the moment of Wesley said, "I need an adult." And then in unison, Riker and Worf said, "We are adults." Would have added a bit of comedy and more creepiness, which is true, which is kind of what we had in the Thaw. It was all supposed to be all fun and games and stuff, but it was very creepy. And that's why they used a clown. So for anyone who is afraid of clowns, I am so sorry. But let's go ahead and get into my next segment, which is the tricorder writing.
My tricorder.
All right. So I got 4 votes over on Patreon, and literally people voted for one of each. So I had, the question was, which one do you think is the best, Deadly Game episode? And if you had one to add, go ahead and add it. Well, someone voted for the game. One person voted the Gamesters of Triskelion. Another one voted for Moving Along Home. And someone voted others, which was to comment. And that was Chuck, who had mentioned Doomsday Machine. So I thought that was interesting, which is why I added it onto my list. But those were it. Now, of course, I usually will always have a tricorder rating. You can go to my Patreon. It's free. It's open to the public, so you don't need to be a member to vote. Just to kind of throw that out there when I am posting it on my Blue Sky or Threads account and Instagram. But yeah, everyone had an opinion, and it just basically evened out to 25% each. But, again, it's one of those things where these episodes are just crazy, right? And like I said, the game was definitely one of them. And that's what's happening next week is the season 3 premiere of Strange New Worlds. I will be watching these episodes live for my Admiral Patrons over on my Patreon page. Then I will drop a bonus episode of my review on the new episodes on Saturday over on my YouTube channel. If you have a penny for your thoughts when these episodes drop, just head over to crusherconvo.com to submit your penny. You can record off my website and it will directly be sent to my email. Or you can also email me your thoughts at crusherconvo@gmail.com, and I will add that to my bonus drop. Now, these bonus episodes are only going to be about 5 to 10 minutes long. They're not going to be very long at all. It's just to kind of give me my idea of the episode. But if you are a Patreon member, especially in the Admiral tier, which is $7 a month, you will get to watch a live react and review when I'm watching the episode happen. So definitely check me out over there, and also check out here on my YouTube channel for those little bonus episodes. And in just a few weeks, it is Vegas, baby. STLV is just around the corner, and I will be a vendor this year. So if you are attending, please stop by for wonderful conversations and free stickers. If you can't make it, please check out my Instagram, as I will go live at times during my time there. There will be no new episodes for Strange New Worlds during that week, but then I will resume with the live reaction and the bonus episode on August 14th. So there'll be like a double feature happening for you guys. My Patreon shout outs go to Chuck, Leslie, and Dave, who are my Commander patrons, and Engineer Mark, who is my Admiral patron. If you would like to support the podcast and enjoy exclusive content, just head over to patreon.com/Crusher Combo, and you can sign up for as low as $3 a month. All right, let me check the comments real fast. Johanna says, and since I'm not finished with season 1, I'm going to abstain from this portion. Please do. Okay. Thank you for that. I do enjoy everyone who joined in. So we have Johannes, we had Sean, David, and Ed. Dave stopped by for a little bit. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your comments. I really appreciate your support. Please don't forget to like this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. As you can see, I love Beverly Crusher. I love Star Trek. And I just gush about the best qualities that she has to offer. But, I really appreciate everybody. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. And yeah, can't wait to start talking about Strange New Worlds. It has been far too long, and so happy that we are finally getting it back. And I don't know about you, but I missed Ortegas. So #Mortegas. If you guys don't know, please head over to Open Pike Podcast. They have amazing interviews with the cast and crew of Strange New Worlds. And of course, everyone also knows about Strange New Pod. They are also amazing. They will be doing amazing reviews of these episodes. So please hit them up. Before we go, David says, difference between the game and Triskelion is Triskelion was forced. Game relied on addiction. Game was a story about drugs and dopamine addiction. Forerunner, Dreamskull, and Triskelion was different. Yes, it was. And I even mentioned that where it was about slavery. So yeah, definitely different game reasons. But of course, it's also about survival. And that was kind of what I was highlighting here. Though it was Wesley's survival really in the game. And then also trying to, save everybody else. So much bigger stakes on Wesley's shoulders. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Until next time, live long and prosper. Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Crusher out.